So welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We start on the DXY on the weekly time frame. We did close the gaps last week and actually closed above this previous high we had as a more significant value area defined. We closed the gap to this high, and we also discussed this last line in the sand, this level here around 108, which price just barely tapped. So we were actually expecting for price to tap into this area and then stall a bit in this area before we see the next move. So on balance, I'm still long on the US dollar, but if I'm looking to the left, I'm going down to the daily time frame, so we see what more significant areas we have to discuss. So we do have this low here, which could become the base for the next bigger consolidation. And when we see how long price took last time to stall in an area here before then a change in momentum occurred, was in here. It's quite interesting. We see this one took from end of September until beginning of November before price then finally showed some momentum and changed sentiment. So we would not be surprised if something similar would happen here. So if price manages to close to fill actually this week and then starting to form a bull flag continuation outside, then we know, right? So we see the consolidation above this last line in the sand, so we are expecting for price to move higher up early next year. On the other hand, I would not be surprised if we see a volume accumulation in here and the retest of this low again before we then see the next higher, the next move up. On balance, I'm still neutral for next week, but biased more to the long. If we see price breaking below this low and then starting to form bear flag continuations, then of course we take the sign of the market and we will switch our bias a bit earlier and then start looking for shorts in US dollar. So going to Euro US dollar, we see it's the inverse picture. We actually made a new low and we closed below the more significant value area we defined here. I'm going down to the 4-hour time frame. We did discuss already bearish continuation last week, and there were 2 trades last week for me, 2 short trades in Euro US dollar. I could not really hold the trade for the whole run, unfortunately, but nevertheless 2 solid trades. So I'm now looking for a bearish continuation. On the lower time frame, we do see we ended on this strong wick, so there's nothing here, and we still managed to close below this previous value area, and we did leave a small liquidity point here. So I'm not interested to trade somewhere in between here, so I want to see price at least retesting this liquidity point before I'm looking for a continuation short. So I really do want to see a structured continuation pattern before I consider any potential trade to the shorts, because we want to see what the DXY is doing. On the other hand, if we see DXY is breaking out and is starting to consolidate outside, so we will see price to fill this wick here and then starting to form a more structured continuation pattern below here. There's still enough room to the downside, so we don't have to worry, we don't have to rush anything at the moment. It's better to give price some time to develop some clear structure before rushing into a trade. Moving on to Australian dollar, US dollar, very similar. We are kind of in no man's land right now. So looking to the left, we are trading below the last consolidation here. So we were already expecting to see another continuation pattern here, and there's still enough room to this more significant low, and I'm looking for price to finish the last leg. However, I really want to see price to form a second base here preferably and then come up. Take some time. it can easily take 2-3 days into next week before we then see a potential entry in this area for a short continuation. US dollar Swiss francs, I will start here on the weekly time frame. We see as the dollar is getting stronger at the moment, we have a very strong momentum run in the US dollar Swiss francs, and we see it could potentially start to slow down. However, right now we actually had here, we had a liquidity area here we were looking for, or also this one, but this was the more significant because it was the start of this last impulsive move to the downside, and price started to react in this area a bit, but then ultimately failed to sell off. So this actually even turned around and made a new high. So it actually shows that there might be still some more room to the upside before then turning around. So I'm looking right now, I have two areas which are interesting for me. On the lower time frame, I'm going to the 1 hour time frame here. So if I see a bull flag continuation above this high early next week, so I'm willing to trade to the long side into at least the next more significant high here. This is not a very long trade, but if it breaks out, we are already in. At least it's enough room to manage. On the other hand, if we see that the DXY is starting to stall a bit or we lose momentum, we still have this smaller liquidity point here with this near miss, and then it could also start to form potentially an expanding structure here into this liquidity area, and I would look for a long from here. This would even be better. We would have more room to manage the trade to the upside, and price has more time to accumulate more volume before the next move up. Next is Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. Starting on the daily time frame, we see that price tapped into the more significant value area here to the left and wicked through. This could also potentially be a washout already. We still ended on a bullish daily candle, but a strong wick through this previous high. So I'm actually kind of neutral, but seeing price action like that, I tend to change my bias, and I'm looking preferably for a short, but I'd like to see for price to first show some change in momentum and some impulsive move below this previous small low here, and then forming some form of bear flag continuation to then go short. On the other hand, if I see price is starting to actually take its time and then forming a deliberate 1, 2, 3 structure into this low, then I know, okay, there is enough or more steam left to drive price higher. So in this case, I would go for a long, but I'd like to see a very deliberate price action formation before I can consider any trade. Moving on to Australian dollar, Swiss francs. This is also an interesting one. I'm starting here on the daily time frame. We are still right now kind of in no man's land. So there's nothing here. We have this small, not that strong value area here to the left, and a stronger one here slightly higher up. And we are the second bullish day in a row. So at the moment, it looks more like price is finishing the move to the upside. I'm going down to the 1 hour time frame. So what I'm looking for right now is if that could be a trade early next week. If price is starting to form a deliberate 1, 2, 3 bull flag continuation, then I will enter along in this area here, which gives me barely enough room to manage the trade to this high here, and with the target of the more significant value area higher up. And if price actually can accumulate a little bit more volume in this area here, then we get a 1, 2, 3, which then easily could drive price even slightly or significantly higher. Actually, it depends how much volume can be accumulated in this area. Very similar for Canadian dollar Swiss francs. So Canadian dollar Swiss francs, starting here on the daily time frame, we had this initial strong sell-off and then retrace, an impulsive retrace, and then price actually started to stall for quite some time in this area here, and then finally last week, towards the end of last week, price gained momentum and broke out. So we have this 1, 2, 3. Oh, my screen just started to flicker. So, okay, here we have here the second part, volume accumulation, a continuation. It's not a clear pattern, but we do see that price started to accumulate more volume here and has now even a bit more room to the upside. On the other hand, we do have this liquidity point here to the left, which we have to consider. This could be a turnaround in price. So let's just take the signals from the market, and as long as we trade above this high here to the left, outside this longer consolidation, and price is forming some form of a clear structure, I'm leaning to a continuation long, as long as we don't tap into this liquidity point here. So on the other hand, if we see price early next week is just moving outside this liquidity point and then showing some change in momentum and breaking back in impulsively and giving me a bear flag continuation, of course in that case I would change my bias and would start looking for shorts. New Zealand dollar, Canadian dollar, on the daily time frame, we see we are in a momentum run and there's still some room to the downside. So this is a clear bearish trend, and we do have a value area here, not that significant, a little bit more significant value area here to the left, and I'm looking for price to just finish the move. Going straight to the 1 hour time frame, the minimum I'd like to see is a structured continuation pattern. I'm like to see that this first high here as a base, and then a 1, 2, 3 into this area for a continuation short. Pound, Australian dollar, very, very similar. Going back shortly to the daily time frame, we have this on watch for quite some time and discussed this many times. So we are now in a bearish continuation from here and are looking for price to finish the run into at least this low here. On the 1 hour time frame, we see we have a bit more significant liquidity point here, and price tends to come back into this area, preferably in form of a structure. That would be the priority one. On the other hand, if price is just gaining a bit more momentum, tapping into this liquidity point, turning around and giving me a lower time frame bear flag continuation, this would also be okay for me to continue a trade to the short, a short trade. So pound Canadian dollar, on the daily time frame as well, very similar. We are right now in no man's land. Here there is the next area to consider is here, this inflection point, and then we have a few more to the left, a little bit further down. So what we are looking right now is for price to finish at least the run into this next inflection point here. Going to the 1 hour time frame, the minimum I'd like to see is for price forming a structured retest of this low here, or structure into this liquidity point here. But for now, like, first priority would be at least a retest of this small low here. And New Zealand dollar yen, the yen pairs moved quite a lot, all of them last week, but the one I like the most right now is New Zealand dollar yen. We see we are in this sideways consolidation for quite some time, and then we finally broke and tapped into this high, in the high of the sideways consolidation, but then price did not really gain momentum, and it stays within this range, right? So even going to the lower time frame, we do see price is really just trading within this range, and we are now tapping or approaching the lower band of this range. So as it stands, I'm leaning more to a stronger yen in general, but we will see. So what I at least want to see, I want to see price gaining some more traction and showing an impulsive break of this low, breaking outside the range and then starting to form a continuation outside, then I'm definitely considering a short. On the other hand, if I just see basically the same on the lower band than I saw on the upper band, so we just price is moving out, breaking back in and then giving us a small bullish continuation inside the range again, then we would trade the range, a range play again into the high. Okay, that's it for next week. That's my watch list. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.